All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming at this late hour. I hope you're still awake and the conference has been great for you so far. My name's Sean. I work on the geoprocessing team on Python, among other things. This is Drew.
Hi, I'm Drew. I work on the GP team. I work mostly with the ArcGIS Online and portal testing stuff that we do. Yeah.
I got to warn you beforehand that I can't guarantee you that much demo in a demo theater, so I apologize for that, but hopefully the stuff we give you is useful. We do have some demo content. One piece is not working quite right, but we'll get you the gist of it, regardless of how demo-focused we are. So there's already a lot of Python just shipping with Pro, with the hosted notebooks context now. You get a lot just kind of in the box. And this curve, depending on what it is either really positive thing or maybe not a positive thing depending on your perspective. But it does mean that you get a lot just out of the box now. If you're in Pro, in these various contexts, there's a lot of libraries we ship. And the context here is that if you have what you need, you don't even need to do a lot to add additional packages. So we're always adding new things. We added the Jupyter notebooks are part of Pro. We're also adding additional libraries like GDAL, H5PY for HCF5 support. That CDF's been there for a while. So we're always doing more to kind of grow that base. And you'll see more happening that kind of integrates across these different pieces. So tomorrow we have a Pro Road Ahead session. One of the things we're going to demo there is actually having notebooks inside of the Pro application. So those notebooks could be driving Pro itself, or they might be being consumed from the hosted notebook experience that you saw yesterday. So the general idea of Conda is allowing you to do more, to expand your possibilities with Python. And it basically is a conjunction of two things. It lets you make virtual environments, this idea of like an encapsulation of different packages and modules, and it's a package manager. So it's a tool to let you install arbitrary packages. And it automates dependency handling. It has something called a SAT solver, which figures out which things are compatible with what. You can distribute your packages in the cloud. You can have them locally. You can have them hosted just in a web server somewhere. And you can access, there's 2 access points from Pro. You can use it from the command line. And if you prefer not to use the command line, there's also the Python backstage. And that's just a core part of the Pro experience. If you go to the ribbon up to project and click on Python, then that gets you to the Python backstage. That's all that is. All right, so these are just a few of the terms in the Conda ecosystem. Package manager is this idea that you have if you've used Linux or you've used different operating systems, often they come with a package manager. The idea here is Conda is this package manager that works across multiple platforms, and it deals with binaries, which is something that like pip and other package managers don't deal with for the Python ecosystem. And an individual package is often like a module of code, and we'll actually show partially an example of one of those. And the environment then is this collection of all the things. So Pro comes with an environment by default. You can make new environments. The repository is it's just like it's the repo, it's the place that you go to get packages, and then a channel is a single location inside of that repository. So like anaconda.org would be a repository, and Esri would be a channel in that repository. All right, so I kind of already give you a little bit of context about environments, but basically the idea here is it's almost like a virtual machine. These are supposed to be independent and isolated on your machine. And the idea here is back in the day, if you did a pip install of a package in 10x in ArcMap, and it upgraded your version of NumPy, then you went to open ArcMap and it crashed, right? So this really helps isolate you from those kinds of problems. Each environment is independent and it doesn't have those same kinds of issues. Now this also can be used in conjunction with things like Docker, and the hosted notebooks platform actually uses Docker itself for doing its isolation. It uses Docker and Conda together. So we've been slowly doing more and more with Conda over the last couple years. We started out just purely command line. We added a UI, we added environment management, we made the experience of managing environments better, made some other improvements, and there's a little bit more I'll even show you at the end of this deck today. And yeah, I guess I can just quickly jump over to that. There's no real harm in doing that. Let's see. Oh, now you can see my screen, but I can't see my screen. So let's see if I can drive blind here. All right, so this is all it is. This is what I mentioned. I won't go into this in any detail, really, but all you need to do is go to that project pane and then click on Python. And it takes a little while to load, but once it does, what you're going to basically see is 3 tabs. One that includes the list of installed packages, so here they are. Here's all the ones that just come out of the box, right? And then you can update your environment, so if packages get out of date, then you can add new ones, right? And this is where you have access to those thousands of packages that Conda provides you. And lastly, you have this Manage Environments button. So when you click on that, the idea here is that you can make multiple environments, and they might have totally different dependencies, which could even be conflicting, right? You might have an environment that depends on one version of a package, and a second environment that depends on a different version, and that's okay. If you just only had one environment, you'd be stuck. You'd have to choose one or the other.
And those environments are kind of like those terrariums that we saw on the previous slide. You know, they're just little isolated environments which have just little differences between them, but you can switch between which one you need to use at any given time. I don't think that's showing the slides.
Yeah, I gotta go back to, right, I gotta do this.
You have to escape out.
I might have to. There we go. All right, so I already mentioned this idea of channels, right? These can be hosted up online. You can make them yourself. There's nothing special about them. It's just like having your own GitHub repo, basically. And it's just a location that has a collection of packages. By default, public channels on anaconda.org are free. If you had, like, you were using this for your organization to distribute your own private code, you didn't want to share it, in that case, you'd have to pay Anaconda, not much, but you know, a few bucks a month or something in order to host that. You also can privately host it, and Anaconda Incorporated has an enterprise offering that does this and a lot more. So we're kind of integrated into that ecosystem through Conda. You want to talk to?
Sure.
Yeah.
For those of us who're familiar with Model Builder or building script tools using Python, this slide might kind of describe what your sort of development steps might be for starting to use Conda for the first time. Those of us who have built a model probably are familiar with doing that similar workflow with Python script, creating maybe Python script tools, something like that, which is kind of our middle bubble there. Beyond that, you might start getting into developing your own Python modules, which would incorporate maybe some functionality that is specific for maybe one of the script tools that you built, if you were trying to expand upon what you've already written, or if you're trying to maybe add a new workflow to an existing tool or something like that. You can have this module which anyone can just import, and then we kind of get into this idea of a package where I don't have to email you this Python module. I can create a Conda environment and make it available so that you can just download it onto whatever system you're using, and then presto, you've got the new functionality just waiting for you there. So it's a great way to compartmentalize any tools that you're building or any sort of expansion of those tools that you've created, and distribute them easily amongst whomever is interested in using it or needs it. So kind of following that, why use packages? Kind of like I mentioned, it's a way to compartmentalize or modularize, I suppose, the design the path that you've chosen, and most importantly, sharing it with other folks. It's of course composed of many small pieces. So, like any good development cycle, you want to be sort of adding a little bit of functionality at a time and testing as you go, making sure that this thing is gonna work for whomever is using it, as long as they have the right maybe Pro version or the right Python version. And this Conda concept, of environments is going to help everyone stay consistent amongst versioning or if there's like a new update that's been released for Pro and you've developed a tool alongside of that, you can package up everything that you're doing in the new version and allow or kind of give a heads up to users that they're going to be needing to require the upgrade to Pro. But once they do that, they can grab your environment or the package that you've created and then start using it from there.
Yeah, and if you go to that backstage and look at some of the list of packages, there's actually some Esri packages produced in the same model. So, for example, there's one called UN Tools, and it's built in the same architecture. I can show it to you in a minute here, but we use it internally for distributing additional packages that aren't part of the core Pro system itself.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So yeah, for creating a package, kind of like we've mentioned, you're creating a recipe to describe the instructions to build the software. So I guess the takeaway from that is to build on top of what you've already built. Maybe build in a way that's kind of clear for everyone who's using the Python script tool that you already have or you're sharing. Just do things in such and such a way that it's kind of consistent with, I suppose, what the tools users are going to expect from it. So some considerations you want to make when you're designing that for the first time is, what are you building, and I think also importantly, why is it being built? What is the purpose, and what kind of output is it going to create? Also, when you're creating a package, one consideration you'll have to make is where that code is going to sit. Are there any dependencies on maybe folder hierarchy with what you've built? So before you share it, maybe understand what sort of folder setup or directory structure the users might require in order for your environment to work properly. And of course, dependencies. If you have modules that are being imported for the first time, or now that you have a new Conda package to share with everyone, make sure that your dependencies are all accounted for, and maybe that you're documenting that for users, or including those dependencies in the package itself. And that's usually a good way to pretty much solve any Conda problem that you come up with. And you've got
yeah, so the actual tool you use to build this package is that Conda build command. And basically it's just like a recipe to say, okay, what goes into this package and what's the output. So this is just a very simple example of something. You basically specify, this is a metadata file, you specify the name, you specify a little bit of information about where the source code that you're trying to package lives, and then you can list requirements. And in this case, this particular package has only the requirement on Python. It doesn't have anything. But because of Conda, this could easily depend on something much harder to install, like TensorFlow or any library that Conda knows how to install that's not trivial for you to get onto someone's machine. And so this is like a kind of pattern that's helpful if you are. Sometimes you're doing things that help like a big group of users, but sometimes you're really just trying to do something that helps future you, right? You were like, well, I want to do this thing so that like 2 months from now when I rebuild my machine, I actually can get back to where I'm at. So Conda can kind of be useful in both those different circumstances, both as a delivery mechanism and a way of encapsulating what this work represents and making sure it can be used in a reproducible manner. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, did you want to have, is there a demo that you want to do that would fit in here now?
We could show it if you want. It's really just importing a module. Was that for this particular slide here?
I'm not sure we have another, let's see, block for it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could throw it in there. That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, you could. Why don't you?
Yeah. So we have kind of a conceptual demo here for you, which should show up.
I'll show the code
3?
afterward.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's not on.
I'm not sure why it's not showing on the screen.
It shows mine, okay.
It should just show up. It was there when we started. No signal. Let me unplug it and replug it in.
Let's make sure.
There it goes.
Getting feedback.
Oops. Is that us? Okay, we're good. Okay, so if you've been to the Dev Summit, maybe for last year, maybe even the year before, I think just last year, you might be familiar with the Friendly Cat Finder tool. This is very famous in Esri conferences now. The Cat Finder tool is just giving us some point data on cat sightings in and around the Redlands area, and my users need a tool to query the cat findings, figure out which cats are friendly, which ones aren't. We're using a very simple system down here of assigning a 1 to friendly cats and a 0 to non-friendly cats. We've built the tool through various demos, which will just take in a set of data. It will prompt you for the friendliness rank that you want to query. In this case, we're going to use a 1. And then when you run the tool, it'll create a feature class for you, which will just include those friendly cats. So what we should see momentarily, there we go, is these 2 points were created in a feature class, which is just the 2 friendly cats that I mentioned. So yeah, maybe one way to expand on this would be to include a little bit more functionality through a module that I've just kind of tacked on to the bottom of this particular script tool. So if I look at another kind of iteration of this tool, I have this new option down here which says generate online output. Maybe my users want to utilize this cat data inside of a web map or something like that, and they want to, I don't know, for some reason they want a KMZ file and a JSON file with the same data that I've created in the previous tool. Using Python, it's really easy to add functionality to that, and I'll show you how. Everything you see up here is from that first tool that I ran, but then there's an extra line which imports this function from a module I call cat export. And inside of cat export, we should have the export for online function right here, which is going to create our KMZ file, our JSON file, and at the bottom of this tool I've actually just included this little check here to see if I did check off that export to online check mark, then I will utilize that export for online function that I've imported. So when I do that, what I should see is a message telling me that it's created the KML file and created the JSON file. Let's run that real quick and take a look at what it gives me. It's going to prompt me for the friendliness rank again. We're going to say 1. That looks good. And then we're going to check on that extra functionality that I've created. And if I run that and then view the details, it'll give me the output from the tool. And it'll say it's creating that KMZ file and it's creating that JSON file. And there we go. I've created, this very neat little expansion to a tool that was previously working great already. Doing something like this is maybe where Conda might come in. You might want to take this custom module here and put it into a package that someone can just download using Conda. And now all of a sudden the tool that I've distributed to, I don't know, maybe hundreds of people who are trying to find friendly cats in Redlands, they can now create KMZs and JSONs really easy, from their data. So the idea being sharing this sort of module through a package is a very clean and kind of no fuss kind of way to share these things. Yeah.
Yeah, so the other thing that that kind of pattern gets you that's nice is that if you basically, so you imagine that what he just showed you was in this module, and if you were to put inside of that module something called an Esri toolboxes subdirectory. So you can see I'm in this webcats folder, Esri toolboxes, and I place a TBX here. Now, when someone installed that Conda package, it would actually show up in their toolboxes as another system toolbox. And this is like if you install the UN tools package, for example, I mentioned, which is built using a Conda package in that same kind of format that we looked at earlier, it does exactly this. So it will, if you install UN tools, you'll see that it adds a new utility networks toolbox to your default toolboxes, and it's just being done with this pattern where they have a Conda package, they create this Esri toolboxes subdirectory inside of it with their custom toolbox, and it just gets added into the system and can be integrated really nicely. So it's a nice way of sharing your tools. And of course, you can also import it from Python, right? It's not just about that you get it from the UI, but this gets you both of those contexts at the same time. Okay, so I think just a couple more quick slides before we have time for some questions. One thing I just wanted to briefly mention is this GUI IVM. This is something we made in conjunction with Microsoft, with some folks on the Azure team. And it can be a nice way of taking advantage of not just Conda, but everything that the Pro environment provides, ArcGIS and everything else. And if you have a situation where you might need to scale up a job, but you're not really ready yet to commit to like a portal or an enterprise-like architecture. You have something that's ephemeral, you want to do it quick, but you need some big compute to do it. This is a great way of doing it. You can access machines with 2 terabytes of RAM or whatever you need for your problem, just kind of using the existing pattern of implementation that you've learned just by using desktop and Pro. So I wanted to mention that you pay like basically on a per minute basis. So if you were to run one of these things for a month, it can be expensive, but on a short-term basis can be a really great way to do analysis. The other thing that we wanted to just briefly mention is that you can now install, if you have an existing Anaconda installation or you're using Visual Studio for managing Conda environments, you can now Conda install ArcGIS. This is a technology preview at 2.3. It'll be part of the core experience in 2.4. Now you still need a Pro installation for this to talk to. It can't just totally be independent of that. But it's still an improvement, right? Because now, if you're working with someone who's like a data scientist or something, they might already have an environment and they want to augment that by accessing ArcGIS. So that'll be something that we support. The other thing that's really nice about this is that we can support versions of Python that aren't the same as what the Pro application itself uses. So we can get to the point of having an environment that's on Python 3.7 and we're on 3.6, and that external environment will just go along. You could use Python 3.7 syntax and commands and use ArcGIS, and it won't affect anything else going on with the rest of Pro. Okay, so just a quick wrap up. We talked about how there's a lot just in the box without you doing anything. There's some cool things you can do by leveraging multiple environments and get some improvements in performance. And there's some cool things with deploying your tools as packages, as Conda packages. You can do this through the backstage that's in Pro now. You can learn the command line if you're so inclined. And yeah, Conda's it really adds a lot to your developer experience for Python folks. And also, Conda actually isn't Python only. It supports Node.js, it supports R, it supports a bunch of different languages, and it's not, one of the things that's powerful about it is it does this all kind of in conjunction. I think that's it for us. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the other groups that have supported us in this. And we have, I think, just a few minutes to answer questions now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
We have microphones if anybody wants that.
Yeah,
you can shout it out, we can reiterate.
Yeah, that's fine.
However you like to do it.
When did you say that it was going to be so that you could have environments with different versions of Python?
The next release of Pro. So that'll be around the UC, somewhere around there. Yeah.
That was.
I guess that's that.
All right, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.